Hey, my name's Cam Banks, also known as Cam Coders, and eventually I want to teach programming. So I figured in order to do that, why not read the entirety of the programming textbook that was taught at my university? The textbook that we'll be using is called Programming with C++, third edition by Daniel Liang. I think it's a really good book, and I feel like if a student was to take all 700 of these pages, maybe a little bit less than that because of the appendix and all that stuff, um, they would be well set for computer science 1 and 2 and beyond. The programming language obviously is in C++, which I am very familiar with. I will be going from chapter 1 all the way to, I think it's chapter 18, which is recursion. And I will be copying the code for all the examples, doing all of the exercises, and simply just going through the entirety of the book. Why am I doing this? Because I want to teach it, and I want to make sure that I'm an expert. So, without further ado, we're just going to go into it. So, going in initially, I didn't expect there to be like so much stuff regarding the basics of a computer. This part of the book talked a lot about CPU, memory, storage, and all that stuff that you would find kind of like in an operating systems course. So I was pleasantly surprised to see that, and I really did like that part of the chapter. I thought that classes and objects was going to be my favorite chapter, but honestly, I think chapter 1 is one of my favorites just because of that one reason. Okay, just checking in. It's been 24 minutes, and I think I'm almost done with chapter 1. No. We're actually like halfway through chapter 1, I think. Yeah. We're halfway through chapter 1. So far, we haven't touched a single bit of programming. It's only been it's been hardware and operating systems, which I think is good. One thing I noticed, and I probably will keep up the mantle of skipping this chapter, but I would probably assign for homework. If I was teaching a course, I would probably assign for homework that they read and do some of the questions for the early parts of chapter 1, because what I notice a lot is in programming courses, people they jump straight into programming not knowing exactly what they're doing on the low level side of things. So I feel like these first couple chapters of the textbook really do give you insight as to what's going on under the hood when you do press play after creating a C++ program. So this is my first time reading this chapter. None of these concepts are completely new to me, but if I was somebody going into programming for the first time, I would take the half hour that it takes to skim through this stuff, and I think that it will give you a lot of insight as a beginner, especially if you know nothing about computers. Because I feel like that's sort of the disconnect that I'm seeing a lot with students. That's definitely something that I would touch on, because sometimes we go straight into like the Hello World program day one. I don't think that's very intuitive. So further into the chapter, they actually start talking about programming, and I couldn't help myself but think about what IDE I wanted to use for this YouTube series. Moreover, I wanted to think about what IDE I would recommend to students. Obviously, it's going to be up to them, but some people wouldn't know what to pick. Here's what I'm going to do. I will use Notepad++, and then I will compile it like the old-fashioned way, basically. Y'all know the drill. So I decided to go with Notepad++ and to compile it through the Windows command prompt. And while this worked for me as some sort of a purist, it probably wasn't the most approachable option for students. So I had to think about some more IDs and scrape the web for some ideas, and I decided maybe CLion would be the best bet. This one was one of my favorite IDEs, and I think JetBrains has a nice, clean-looking interface. I don't want to push the JetBrains IDE onto people. However, if we can get this for free, I think it'll be a good way to do it. and then I will teach people how to use the free IDs and install the compiler. But I feel like right now, as a beginner, going through and trying to install a compiler right now really isn't the best way to do things. And then using it online is kind of like on the opposite end of that extreme. Yes, they will need to learn how to do these things later on, but as a beginner for a CS1 course, I don't think it's something that should be stressed. I just want people to get in, have an editor, and just being able to code. And yeah, we have downloads for Windows and Mac and Linux, which is awesome. This is not sponsored. Let's just go ahead and set that up. So taking a little bit break from the textbook and just I will walk students through the process of getting a student license. So now that was settled, I can finally start doing some of the programming exercises. And obviously they were easy, but I'm not going to lie, I'm not a big fan of the ones that ask you to draw like pyramids or any kind of ASCII art exercises. I still give them to students, but I was never a big fan of those. So for this, I don't know if you guys can see, but the little pyramid exercise, I don't know if they want both of those or if they want a program that displays one pyramid and then the upside down pyramid. I will do the harder one though, which displays both, which I think should be easy. So of course I wasn't going to use loops because they didn't teach that yet, and it was honestly easy, just a couple of lines with stars on it. But I did run into one exercise that kind of confused me, not because it was hard, but because they wanted you to use square roots, which wasn't taught yet. Obviously didn't use C math yet, but you can see a little bit of square roots there. How are we to compute this without the math library, which they didn't even mention libraries yet? So that's something that I'm a little bit confused about. There's sequences that don't require square root, so I would probably ask them to do that instead, or just skip this exercise entirely. Yeah, I don't know. So I have my own outro recorded here, but honestly, post-recording Cam is going to take over. I just want to put a disclaimer. Like, obviously you can use square root in other ways without importing the math library. My point is, in the 47 pages that I read, I didn't see a single like math-related programming concept that was introduced that can make that exercise trivial. It was just uncharacteristically hard relative to the other ones. If there was using a different sequence, like I forgot what it's called, but it's another sequence that you can use to approximate pi that don't require the square root function, then I think that exercise would fit exactly there, which is funny because they use it in the Java version, but I don't know. All right. That was chapter 1. It took me a long time to get through that, but it was fun. It was really fun. It took me back to when I was taking CS1. My education is so skewed that honestly, in these 2 hours, I learned more in these 2 hours than like one half a semester of CS1. But it is nostalgic to come back to the basics and it's also, I think the fun part is really restricting yourself to the basics, trying to get things done without loops and stuff like that. That's always fun to do. I will start chapter 2 probably tomorrow and have the video up.